that the dam is not a unique structure to Georgia or the Irrigation Service. The Georgia Soil and Water Conservation Commission extended is presented as the and encourage you to patient Monday, July the 9th for Sailor Dam. If that link 7, Supplemental Watershed Plan and Environmental Assessment. The purpose of the planning study is to assess Settingdown Creek Dam's number 27's watershed, evaluate the performance of the existing structure, develop a plan to address any compliance issues identified, determine if federal financial assistance will be available to address those issues, and to determine if the project sponsors would like to continue operation of the dam within the NRCS watershed program. As part of the study, public participation is very important. The objective of the public participation plan is to inform the public and watershed stakeholders of the planning effort. The planning study requires a series of public meetings. 2 public meetings have already been held and included a brief history of the NRCS watershed program, a brief history of dam safety, considerations for dam design, operation, and maintenance, an overview of the Settingdown watershed and dams that are included in the study, and the solicitation of questions and comments for scoping topics and project opportunities and concerns. The second public meeting identified some potential rehabilitation alternatives for the dam. The first public meeting was posted to Schnabel's YouTube channel from August 7th to August 17th, 2020, and the second public meeting was posted from December 18th, 2020 until January 4th, 2021. Please note that the first and second public meeting presentations are being reposted with this third presentation to our YouTube channel for those who are interested in viewing the presentations but were unable to do so during those allotted date ranges described above. This third presentation will discuss the following topics: a review of the Settingdown Creek watershed and the dams that are included in the planning study, a review of the existing conditions associated with the dam, and the presentation of 3 shortlisted alternatives that are being considered by the planning team. At the end of the presentation, questions and comments will be solicited from you, the viewer, and other stakeholders, and we'll give you instructions on how to do that. The Settingdown Creek watershed is located in northern Forsyth County, Georgia. The creek is a tributary of the Etowah River, which flows into the Coosa River near Rome, Georgia. The watershed contains over 34,000 acres of drainage area, and the original watershed plan, which was prepared in the early 1950s, provided for the construction of 15 floodwater retarding structures, which are known as the Settingdown Creek dams. This slide shows a map of the Settingdown Creek watershed with its delineation beginning at the confluence of Settingdown Creek and the Etowah River at the west or east side of the map. The watershed boundary is delineated in red, and the locations of roadways of note are also indicated for reference. Georgia 400 is located near the east or right side of the map, and the locations of other major roadways in northern Forsyth County, Georgia are also indicated. Georgia 369, Georgia 9, Georgia 306, Georgia Highway 20 are some of those roadways that are indicated that kind of bound the Settingdown Creek watershed. This slide shows a delineation of the watershed overlain on aerial photography from the early 1960s, which would have been taken shortly after the completion of most, if not all, of the Settingdown Creek dams. As you can see, there have been some changes to the land uses within the watershed over the past 60 years. As part of the watershed planning initiative, there were several focal points of analysis and study. The planning team looked at upstream areas to assess flooding and the need for additional storage capacity in the lakes. We also considered downstream areas for flooding associated with storm events, as well as hypothetical breaches of the dam. The hydraulic capacity of the existing spillway outlet works was also evaluated for performance during various storm events. An evaluation and analysis of economic and social benefits provided by the dam, as well as an assessment of environmental and cultural resources were also performed. Once again, here's a map of the Settingdown Creek watershed. There are 6 dams that are currently included in the planning study. Most of the dams are located at the far upstream end of the watershed to the right or east side of this view. The location of Settingdown Creek 27, which is the subject of this presentation, is located near the downstream or west end of the watershed. Some items of note for Settingdown Creek 27. The dam meets Georgia Safe Dams Program criteria to be considered a Category 1 high hazard potential dam. This means that failure or improper operation of the dam would likely result in the loss of human life. The dam requires an operating permit from the Safe Dams Program. Previous assessments indicate that the dam does not comply with current SDP rules and requirements. The dam is not exempt from SDP rules and requirements, and a purpose of the planning study is to determine if federal assistance will be available to bring the dam into compliance with current dam safety standards. The Georgia Safe Dams Program is aware of this dam, its classification as a high hazard dam, and that the dam is being studied by the planning team. Some original design features associated with the dam are that it was not originally designed and constructed as a high hazard dam. Some development has occurred downstream since its original construction, which has necessitated an increase in the hazard classification. The dam is a flood mitigation dam, and an anticipated secondary purpose of the dam is sediment accumulation or storage. The dam spillway consists of a reinforced concrete riser structure and nearly horizontal pipe that conveys water from the upstream side of the dam in the lake through the dam to the downstream outlet channel beyond the downstream slope of the dam. There's also a vegetated or earthen auxiliary spillway channel located near the left end of the dam. And as we'll see in some upcoming slides, Fricks Road, which is a county road, crosses just downstream of the control section of the auxiliary spillway. Here's the map of the Settingdown Creek watershed one more time, just to reiterate the location of Settingdown Creek Dam number 27, highlighted in yellow near the left or west end of this view. Some more facts about Settingdown 27. Fricks Road traverses the crest of the dam in West Forsyth County near the boundary with Cherokee County. Fricks Road also passes just downstream of the auxiliary spillway control section, as stated previously. Construction of the dam was completed in 1958. The dam appears on the National Inventory of Dams and has a height, a surveyed height of approximately 44 feet. The drainage area to the dam is approximately 1.6 square miles, and the design storage capacity of the impoundment is 459 acre-feet. This slide shows an aerial photo taken in the early 1960s, shortly after the dam's original construction. As you can see, the county road was present over the crest of the dam in the early 1960s. Fast forward to today, and some changes have occurred upstream of the dam within the watershed. Note the location of some residential development. As part of the planning study, a limited topographic survey of the crest of dam, principal spillway alignment, and auxiliary spillway channel was performed. This survey data is overlain on an aerial photo. This photo was taken prior to the clearing of the dam that occurred during the summer of 2020. If you visited the dam today, the trees located on the upstream and downstream slopes shown in this view have been removed and the dam is in the process of revegetating. Please note the location of the auxiliary spillway near the left side of this view. The inlet channel is the cleared area that looks kind of like a pasture. Note the location of several large trees along Fricks Road near the control section of the dam, and in the outlet channel, which is relatively heavily forested in this view. The principal spillway riser structure is located in the lake. If you can note the gray rectangle with some survey points located around it. The blue line indicates the approximate alignment of the principal spillway conduit that runs from the lake through the dam to the outlet channel downstream of the dam. This is a site plan with some topographic contours that show the location of the auxiliary spillway, dam, and principal spillway. You can see the location of Fricks Road going across the dam and the location of some wetlands that were delineated downstream of the dam. We indicate these wetlands and note that any rehabilitations to the dam or spillway system should not result in impacts to the wetlands delineated near the top of this view. Here's a photograph taken from the crest of the dam after the clearing was performed. The upstream slope you can see is in view. Fricks Road is at the left side of the view, and the principal spillway riser structure is located in the lake in this view. Note that at the time this photograph was taken, some trees and other woody vegetation were growing out of the riser structure. Here's a view near the plunge pool of the dam. You can see in this view the location of the plunge pool where the water is discharging and the downstream end of the principal spillway conduit. On either side of the concrete conduit, you'll note the location of two corrugated metal pipe outlets. These outlets are associated with the internal drainage system for the dam that was installed as part of the dam's original construction. The downstream slope of the dam and Fricks Road would be up and to the right of this view. As part of the planning study, an environmental survey of the dam and its vicinity was performed. The aquatic resource survey shown at the left side of this slide indicates the limits of the survey area, the location of streams, wetlands, and open water in relation to the dam, and the location of some invasive species identified as predominantly Chinese privet are shown on this survey exhibit. The planning team notes that no protected species were identified or found during the survey associated with this dam. A phase 1 cultural resources survey for the dam and its vicinity was also performed as part of the planning process. The survey map at the left side of the view indicates the location of survey transects and shovel tests performed to support this survey. A literature review of the area was also performed. The archaeological or the cultural resources team identified no archaeological resources. The dam, being over 50 years old, is eligible for listing on the National Registry of Historic Places, but given that the dam is not a unique structure to Georgia or the United States, nor were any notable feats of engineering performed, recommendation for listing on the registry is not recommended. The cultural resources team recommends that no additional cultural resources work is required to assess this dam. As part of the evaluation of downstream areas associated with the dam, a dam breach analysis and inundation mapping was performed. This map indicates the limits of a hypothetical sunny day failure or breach of the dam. The blue areas are where water associated with a breach of the dam would inundate. The locations of 3 impacted structures relatively close to the dam at the upstream extent of the inundation area are also indicated on this map. In addition to the inundation mapping, downstream flood analysis were performed for the 2 through 500 year storm events to assess the limits of flooding associated with those events downstream of the dam. The 100-year and 500-year flood limits indicated in yellow and purple respectively are shown on this map. Note that there are no structures between the dam and the Etowah River that would be impacted by the 500-year flood or less storm events. As the planning team evaluated the dam, upstream flood limits were also studied and evaluated. This slide indicates the limits and locations of several elevations upstream of the dam of note. The normal pool elevation, auxiliary spillway control section elevation, and dam crest elevation are shown in the blue, cyan, and magenta lines on the map. We also note the location of the 100 and 500 year storm water surface elevations in red and orange respectively, and the maximum water surface elevations associated with the Georgia Safe Dams Program design storm and NRCS freeboard hydrograph design storm are also indicated in yellow and green. Note that there are a couple of residential structures that would be impacted by the largest storm events, being the half PMP for the Georgia Safe Dams Program design storm, which would be on the order of 15 or 16 inches of rain in 6 hours, or the freeboard hydrograph storm event, which would be on the order of 30 to 32 inches of rain in 6 hours. A review of some of the existing deficiencies with the dam. As previously noted, prior studies of the dam indicated that the dam may not be capable of meeting Georgia Safe Dams Program criteria. So just keep that in mind as we work through this slide. Some maintenance issues involving the dam were identified. As noted, the dam was cleared in the summer of 2020. There are some trees and brush that are growing in and around the riser structure, which would impact and obstruct flows into the riser structure in the lake. An underwater inspection of the riser structure concluded that portions of the slide gate assembly are worn and or corroded, and portions of the riser concrete are cracked and or spalled. A closed circuit television inspection of the interior of the principal spillway conduit was performed, and after a review of the footage from this inspection by the planning team, the pipe was determined to be in an acceptable condition for continued use. Additional modeling and updates to elevations and material data from the planning study have determined that the dam is capable of storing and passing the Safe Dams Program design storm event, which is 50% of the probable maximum precipitation. We do note that the trees and fencing along Fricks Road downstream of the control section would be considered an obstruction by the Safe Dams Program, and so some consideration to removal or relocation of those features will likely be necessary as part of this process. With regard to NRCS criteria, the auxiliary spillway engages prior to the principal spillway hydrograph storm event, which is an evaluating storm for the location of the auxiliary spillway. The auxiliary spillway is slightly lower than what is required, which is a positive. Actually, let me rephrase that. The auxiliary spillway is slightly lower than what is required and would need to be raised to meet NRCS criteria. During the design storm event for the NRCS, which is 100% of the PMP, the dam would overtop by 1.1 feet, and the auxiliary spillway would breach during the design storm event. So those are some of the deficiencies associated with NRCS criteria. The planning team has shortlisted 3 alternatives, which will be discussed in the remaining part of this presentation. The first will be a no action alternative that would assume rehabilitation of the dam to Georgia Safe Dams program criteria and no federal funding necessary or required associated with that option. This option would be the least expensive of breaching the dam or rehabilitating the dam to state criteria. A decommissioning alternative is required for evaluation as part of the planning study. This would involve permanent removal of the lake by taking out the dam and stabilizing the lake and footprint of the dam after removal. There's also a need to consider impacts to downstream areas with the removal of the dam. Finally, a future with federal investment alternative, which would be a full NRCS rehabilitation, will be presented. This would involve changes to the embankment, removal and replacement of the principal spillway riser structure, and the decommissioning of the existing auxiliary spillway and construction of a structural auxiliary spillway. As the NRCS rehabilitation alternative was developed, consideration of upstream non-flood controlled ponds and uncertainties with climate change were also considered. The no action alternative for this dam would involve really maintenance items and removal of obstructions associated with the auxiliary spillway. As we said previously, the dam is capable of meeting the Georgia Safe Dams Program design storm requirements, both hydraulically and structurally. So some smoothing of the upstream and downstream slopes to a uniform 3-to-1 grade would be performed, and improvements to the shoreline in the form of the installation of a riprap lined wave berm would be installed. The principal spillway riser structure is in relatively poor condition, so rehabilitation of the riser structure would be recommended by the planning team. This rehabilitation would take advantage of the acceptable portions of the conduit that are already installed, but some extension to the principal spillway conduit will be necessary, and a new riprap line plunge pool would be constructed to proper dimensions to accommodate flows through this pipe. As stated previously, no structural modifications are necessary to the existing auxiliary spillway. However, the fencing and trees that cross the auxiliary spillway channel should be relocated. Here's a site plan that indicates some of the items that were discussed for the no action alternative. Regrading of the upstream and downstream slopes, the addition of the wave berm and riprap lining on the upstream slope, the reconstruction of the principal spillway riser structure, and improvements to the plunge pool are all indicated here. The auxiliary spillway channel could generally be left in the same configuration that it is in. However, between stations approximately 200 and 300 on the center line of the dam, trees and fencing that run adjacent to Fricks Road are creating an obstruction of potential flows through this channel, and some consideration will need to be given to relocation of those trees and fencing to remove the obstruction. Here's a profile view of the proposed improvements to the principal spillway system. As you can see, a wave berm would be constructed on the upstream slope of the dam to accommodate the riprap lining for the wave berm. The principal spillway riser structure would be relocated slightly upstream, and the principal spillway conduit would be extended both in the upstream and downstream directions to accommodate some of these improvements to the embankment and spillway system. A decommissioning alternative would result in the permanent draining of the lake and removal of the existing embankment structure. This process would involve reconnection of the floodplain to the original grades prior to the construction of the dam, stabilization of the lake bed with permanent vegetation, and stabilization of the primary channel through the footprint of the old dam where stream flows would flow on a regular basis. In addition, consideration to decommissioning the dam would also involve keeping Fricks Road in service. And to do this, the installation of a bridge or a large culvert system would be required. Decommissioning the structure would improve flooding upstream of the dam, but the flood benefits downstream of the dam would be lessened or lost. As part of the planning study, evaluations of the downstream benefits currently provided by the dam, as well as the loss of those benefits, have also been considered. Here's a site plan with the layout of what would happen if the dam were to be removed. Note that the bridge or culvert system associated with Fricks Road is not shown in this view. Typically, costs associated with the bridge and culvert system would become the responsibility of the sponsor were this dam to be removed. However, given the complications associated with this alternative, the decommissioning alternative was not selected as the locally preferred alternative. Here's some examples of what a decommissioning alternative would look like. You can see that portion of the embankment would be removed. In the case of the decommissioning alternative, the entirety of the embankment will be removed, and the slopes would be laid back. In the case of Settingdown 27, a bridge or culvert system would have to be constructed to keep Fricks Road in service. And you can see the riprap lining that would be involved where flows would occur on a regular basis. The final alternative that we'll discuss in this presentation is the future with federal investment. This would involve a full rehabilitation of the dam to NRCS criteria and would involve raising the crest of the dam to the current maximum water surface elevation associated with the design storm event, regrading the upstream and downstream slopes to 3:1, constructing a riprap lined wave berm along the upstream shoreline of the dam, and decommissioning or closing off the existing vegetated auxiliary spillway. The principal spillway riser structure would be removed and replaced with a new structure, and the principal spillway conduit will be extended into the lake slightly further and also downstream in the downstream direction. A riprap line plunge pool would also be constructed at the downstream end of the principal spillway conduit. The structural spillway for the auxiliary spillway system would consist of a 90-foot wide reinforced concrete labyrinth crested chute spillway. This would have 3 labyrinth cycles, and this spillway is what would be required to pass the flows associated with the more intense NRCS storm event. The spillway would be constructed over the earthen embankment, and a bridge on the order of 90 feet would be required to keep Fricks Road in service after the spillway is constructed. The spillway would include a reinforced concrete stilling basin and riprap lined apron to dissipate energy associated with high flow storm events. This site plan shows the layout of the future with federal investment alternative. As you can see, the auxiliary spillway at the left side of the view would be filled with compacted earth fill up to the dam crest elevation, and the labyrinth spillway would be constructed over the embankment. This alternative would require for Fricks Road to be closed for a significant number of months while the work was being performed, and a detour would be required until the construction of the spillway and bridge were completed. There's a profile view of what the labyrinth spillway would look like. Flows would enter the spillway from the left or lake side of the profile, spill over the labyrinth walls onto a flat slab before discharging down the 3-to-1 sloped chute and into the reinforced concrete stilling basin and riprap apron downstream of the dam. Here's an example of a labyrinth spillway over an embankment dam with a bridge across it. The bridge shown in this picture is obviously a pedestrian bridge, but a highway bridge could be designed to go over the top of the dam and labyrinth spillway in the case of Settingdown 27. And then here's another example of a labyrinth spillway that's been constructed over an earthen embankment. So as part of the planning process, the planning team has had several meetings with project sponsors and representatives of the state NRCS office. And as a result of those meetings, the locally preferred alternative for the dam is presented as the future without federal investment alternative, or no action alternative. The dam and spillway system currently are capable of meeting the hydraulic and structural requirements associated with the Georgia Safe Dams Program design storm event. So modifications and improvements to this dam would include regrading the upstream and downstream slopes to a uniform 3-to-1, constructing the riprap lined wave berm along the shoreline of the dam, removing and replacing the principal spillway riser structure, extending the principal spillway conduit, and installing a riprap lined plunge pool at the downstream end of the extended conduit. And as stated previously, there's no structural modifications needed to the auxiliary spillway. However, the Safe Dams program will likely require the relocation of the trees and fencing that are currently located across the auxiliary spillway channel to bring that spillway into compliance with their standards. Public participation as part of the planning study is of great importance to the planning team, and we welcome your questions and comments regarding this dam and the planning study. We invite you, the viewer, and project stakeholders to submit questions and comments using the link to the Google form described here at this web address. Note that the link shown here is not clickable in the presentation. However, we intend to include a link in the comments section on our YouTube page for this particular dam. If that link can't be accessed, then the web address shown here, the HTTPS web address, can be typed into a Google Chrome or Internet Explorer address bar to access the Google form for dam number 27. We will accept questions and comments with this public meeting through Monday, July the 19th, 2021. We thank you once again for your interest and participation in this third public meeting for Settingdown Creek Dam number 27, and encourage you to submit any questions and comments you may have so that they can be included in the planning effort. Thank you.